So we are going to kick this panel off. AfroCannes is all about making sure that we leave our communities with the ability to have kind of insights, connection, networking opportunities. But I think this panel is going to really kind of take us on a 1,000-foot view of how do we think about data, AI, and financing, and the intricacies of all these together. I've got two amazing folks here that we're going to be chatting with. Phil McKenzie, who's the co-founder and COO of Goldfinch, and we have the amazing, the brilliant Kelly Wallach. Woolfolk, apologies. Who's an entertainment lawyer in the U.S. The two of them and myself are going to kind of take us on a journey between their personal careers and how they got to where they are today. We're going to touch on AI and data. And most importantly, if you're looking to understand how you can get your projects funded and have some encouragement that there are people who are out there who want to support projects like this is what this panel discussion is for. Kelly, because I flipped and flopped your name, I'm going to start with you. And so I always start every interview with kind of your personal journey. Your personal narrative, your genesis story, oftentimes drives us to where we are today. And I would really want to hear, how did you get to where you are today? How do you go from being, Kelly to being the attorney to now working in film?
Okay, thank you, Yusuf. Really happy to be here. I'm a bit of a hybrid horse, I guess. Okay, is that better? All right. I had no idea, wasn't interested in being a lawyer ever. I was interested in diplomacy and culture, language. That's always been a thing of mine. I was a Spanish major in college. When I was in college in the US at Spelman College, I ran into Spike Lee, like physically bumped into Spike Lee because he went to Morehouse College, very famous African-American college for men. We bumped, and he's very short, I'm very tall. He was there promoting She's Gotta Have It, and then his second feature film, School Days. Long story short, I ended up getting a role in School Days. So that introduced me to the entertainment industry. I went out to LA, ended up working at Virgin Records in their legal department just by chance, reading artist contracts, and I was like, oh, I could do this if this is what being a lawyer is. Cool people, jeans, music playing. So I went to law school, still had kind of an interest, the international thing and also the entertainment piece. I wasn't sure how I would merge those, but over years and time and different opportunities I had, they began to come together. And I curated my career. I didn't go to big law and do all the firm thing because it just wasn't my interest. But I just chose projects and opportunities that felt like what I wanted to do and the people I wanted to support. And little by little, I got here, so. So there's more, but that's good for now.
No, that's fantastic. And I love the kind of organic way that you got to where you are. Kind of, again, demonstrates that you don't have to have that kind of cookie cutter approach. It works for many, but many others it doesn't. How about you, sir?
Well, yeah, like many people in the industry, sort of, there's a bit of a circuitous route in and not a sort of natural path that we found. And especially, I think, in the UK and Europe and everywhere outside of the US, there's less of a sort of marked route and development path into the creative sector than potentially in North America. But yeah, for me, it was, my background's in I studied politics. I worked in marketing and strategy at a number of big companies, FMCG companies in the UK, and then really had the opportunity to come in on the ground floor with Kirsty, who's the original founder of Goldfinch, and built it from the ground up with Kirsty and with Sarah, who's also in the audience too. So that was 12 years ago. We began as a financier using some of the sort of tax wrapping structures that were particularly exciting and flexible then. And very quickly, as soon as people know that you can raise money or that you have money within film and TV, they beat a very hard path to your door. And we were lucky that a number of the films we backed early doors were, really sort of fantastic young UK indie directors that went on to do great things. So that just snowballed and continued. And over the last 12 years, we've raised and deployed close to $300 million, 300 plus productions we've been involved in. Very proud to say a lot of that all of it is at the indie end of the spectrum. So the lower budget, a lot of first time directors as well, we've helped to support and bring through. And also across that, also across those 12 years, we've added extra elements onto what we do as Goldfinch. So yes, finance is still a core of our business, but in the last few years particularly, we've lent into the production side, really build out our production capability in a number of areas. We've really lent into the tech side. I'm co-founder of a business called MYCO, which is the largest Web3 streaming platform in the world. Tech is, a key focus area for us moving forward. We announced a strategic partnership with the Digital Genesis Fund a few days ago, who are looking to deploy 20 million into AI, Web3 focused entertainment companies. And then in the last 12 months, we've really moved into and established a presence in the Middle East, North Africa and Asia, which we see as high growth, huge potential markets. We announced a $20 million debt fund to focus on productions out of those areas. And, for us, Africa is that next step. We've been looking and digging and finding partnerships, and we think there's a lot of common threads and exciting elements that we see in the Middle East and Asia that are also apparent and emerging in Africa too. And, I think we've got a role to play, and I'm excited about learning more and getting more involved in Africa to bring finance and experience and all the other kind of network we can to the table too.
There we go, folks. We have 2 new panelists here. Please introduce yourselves. We've begun. I think she's going to translate. Yeah. So we've begun here with sharing our personal stories and what is your journey to film and data and AI?
Can I have your mic, because then I'll translate.
Yeah.
Para fazer minha introdução.
Pode falar em português e eu vou traduzindo.
Ok. Boa tarde a todas as pessoas. Começo me desculpando pelo atraso. Tive um imprevisto no marché.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be translating for her. She's Vivi Pistache, maravilhosa, marvelous. She said that she's starting by. I want to apologize for the delay. I had an issue at the marché do film.
Quero agradecer a Prudence e toda a equipe, né, pelo esforço de garantir a nossa presença, nossas ideias, debates e representatividade no espaço como Cannes.
I want to thank Prudence and all of the team for assuring that we have a space to mark our presence in a place like the Cannes Film Festival at the AfroCannes.
Sou Viviane Ferreira, sou diretora e produtora no Brasil. Estou à frente da companhia Odum Filmes e do Instituto de Formação chamado Instituto Audiovisual Mulheres de Odum.
I am Viviane Ferreira. I am... Desculpa, perdi as...
Diretora e produtora.
I'm a director and producer at Odum Films. And I'm the president of the Audiovisual Institute Women of Odum.
Nos últimos anos, para além da atividade como diretora, tenho contribuído com a construção de políticas públicas no país com o intuito de facilitar ou possibilitar o acesso de realizadores e realizadoras negras a financiamentos de suas obras e produções.
In the past years, in addition to being a director and an artist, I have been working on public politics and public actions to help include black filmmakers and artists inside of the spaces.
E a partir dessa experiência que chego aberta em dialogar com vocês, cumprimento todos os companheiros da mesa.
And it's from this experience that I come here and I'm open to dialogue with all of you and be a part of this panel.
I know very little Portuguese, but obrigado, I think is the right way. Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing, your journey here and all that you do. And I think the beauty that this particular series of conversations presents is the breadth of the African diaspora. We have 2 African Americans here. We have an African from probably a few millennia ago, and we have our Brazilian sister here. So I think it's really fantastic that we're on this panel. So data is gold, content is king, AI is the new court jester. And so how do we make sure that we both enable, do you want me to stop so you can translate? We'll work with this.
Sorry, and I apologize that I'm not a professional translator. So,
no apologies here. So we want to kind of tackle all those issues. Why does data matter? What data are you using? How is it impactful in the decision-making process for financing? And what risks do AI present? That's a lot, but we'll start with the data side. Let's start with you.
So I'm going to focus particularly for independent filmmakers. Data is critical. If you don't have any credibility yet, if you don't have a track record, when you come to the table with data, looking for investors in particular, and you can show them numbers, whether it's social media, engagement by people who may be part of your community, that helps them see that there is something there, that there's something that they're willing to put their money into. So, as you said, data is king right now. It's huge. Everybody's looking at numbers. Whether you have a following on Instagram, if you have a meet and greet with some of your talent and people show up and then they're posting things, that really matters. And so when you can bring that to the table and put that down in definable numbers, investors want to see what is it that where they're going to put their money and how can they get it back. If you show them that there are numbers behind this, even though there's no money attached yet, the data can, again, validate sort of what it is you're trying to do, at least initially.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'd say that we are lacking in our use of data, as an industry, and the film side, and especially the indie side. All of the main companies, the big companies, whether it's sales, distributors, financiers, producers, especially directors, absolutely, are not using data to the extent of the majority of the other industries out there. I'd say we are slow to adapt, slow to innovate, slow to move with technological advancements, and we've seen that over the last couple of decades with the tech companies coming in and really stealing a march on the incumbents. So I totally agree. I'd encourage everyone to embrace and get as deep into the data as possible, because actually the last 6 to 12 months I've seen a bit of a change in attitude amongst a lot of the companies as well, and some great companies coming through that are offering services using data to analyze audience and packages, etc. Anything that gives you that edge and to your point gives you that ability to sell in your idea and your vision is absolutely key. And my final point is to the AI and the value of data. This is where blockchain is absolutely key in order to stamp and protect the data. So AI is great, but it's wild and it's unwieldy unless you have some control on the IP and some way of tracking that IP. And that's where we strongly believe you need to integrate the two together in whatever you're doing, sort of creatively, as well as harnessing the data to inform all your decision making and pitch packages, etc.
Eu concordo com as premissas e com a complexidade do debate. Acho que os dados, eles com certeza são indispensáveis, até porque dinheiro a gente contabiliza em números.
I agree with the premise and the data and the conversation that is happening, especially because the data is what helps us contabilize in terms of numbers when it comes to what's happening or what we're providing.
E penso que o ambiente da tecnologia tem uma característica própria, que é processo de transformação e mutação cotidiana numa velocidade muito rápida.
And the environment of technology has a very self-characteristic that is the capability of computerizing and processing a lot of data very fast.
Isso nos impõe desafio de entender qual é a narrativa construída e fundamentada a partir dos dados que guarda relação com a realidade das pessoas.
That imposes a difficulty for us, which is to understand what's the narrative that. Qual é a narrativa?
Qual é a narrativa? As diversas narrativas que os dados podem nos ofertar, qual é aquela que pode ser confiável, porque nos mostra a relação com a realidade das pessoas.
So the difficulty is to understand what is the narrative that we're going to build on top of all the data that we can get, because it can be distorted, and how is it going to actually relate to the reality of the people?
Porque perfil nas redes que tenha milhões de seguidores e todos esses seguidores são robôs construídos a partir de outros aplicativos tecnológicos, eles não se comunicam com o cotidiano das pessoas em mesmo pé de igualdade e qualidade que perfil de milhões sendo seguidos por pessoas reais.
Because the profile of an influencer that has millions of followers, but they're all robots that are there communicating and liking and putting in comments, it doesn't qualify as much as another influencer that maybe doesn't have as many followers, but they're real followers and they're truly engaged and they're truly interested in what that person is putting out.
Isso nos exige investir em processos de pesquisa tecnológica, investir no processo de regulamentação em mesma velocidade que os avanços.
So this forces us to invest into technological research and into regulation that is at the speed of these technological changes to help us truly track what is happening and what the truth of that data is.
E esse é grande desafio para o nosso tempo.
And that's the biggest difficulty that we have in our time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get you to a comment. I wanna double down on two things you said here. First, I mean, I worked in tech. It was my job. I worked in AI, so I built the algorithms that determined whether you would get distribution. And so I deeply understand and appreciate the issues around engagement versus followers. And so when we circle back, I'd love for you to kind of dig deeper in that as well, if you could. Kelly, you wanted to jump in and you wanted to add something here, please.
So in listening and thinking about the idea of data, for those who are producing and you want to think about how your data can help you advance your project, it's certainly what you are bringing, your data, your followers, all that, but also do the research so that you know who you're pitching to. It's really important to know who you're pitching to. What is it that they are looking for? What are those numbers? Where are the audience gaps? Where are they trying to find someone to fit in? You know, because at this point, a lot of these companies are focused much more on growth over profit. They want to grow their audience base. So if you can show, oh, well, in this territory or in this demographic, there's something that's missing, and you can present how you can amplify that for them, that's the service they want. You're basically problem solving through your work. We think of it as conceptual, and it is conceptual, but you have to start not just with you have this beautiful story to tell, that's wonderful, but you think about, okay, investors are going to want to know about, you want to think about your funding and then the distribution. That's all data related. So what is the problem that you're solving for these people? How are you helping them to bridge whatever gap there may be? I think things are dropping down, kind of downloading it, also looking at the cheat sheet. So yeah, but that's good for now.
I mean that's perfect. We'll hold it there. But I want to in the first panel that one of the earlier panels we had this week, we talked about AI, and there's a kind of apprehension to leveraging AI, and I think rightfully so, because people are afraid of their work being stolen, of platforms misappropriating and not giving fair compensation for their works. Yet, as you kind of hinted at, if you don't innovate, if you don't adapt, you'll be left behind. And actually, having worked in the industry, I don't think I've heard anyone talk about leveraging blockchain to benefit or protect IP. Can you speak a bit about that, please?
I can probably scratch the surface. I'm not a technologist, so I can know enough to be dangerous on it. But I mean, yeah, fundamentally, the characteristics of the blockchain are it's a way of stamping ownership on IP and tracking the transfer of that ownership, down the blockchain and to other people should you want to transfer it. So. So there's for an example, there's very interesting companies that are, say, taking apart a piece of content and taking the characters or the clothes they're wearing. Each of those is assigned to a block within the chain, and then you're able to sell and acquire those as other creators to move them into your story or script or world that you build, if it's a metaverse potentially in the future too. So it's a way of kind of, I suppose, modularizing and showing ownership over all these different elements within what you do within the story, but fundamentally, putting that IP on something that is trackable, traceable, and is undeniable because it's a public record and unchangeable by anybody else once it's on there. So it's a powerful tool. There's been a lot of bad press probably, and in the last couple of years around crypto as an industry in general. But when you take away the sort of crypto and the trading and the gambling aspect of it, the fundamentals of it and the blockchain technology and the tokenization really holds a lot of power in solving. In supporting AI, as we're talking about, but really solving a lot of other issues that we see within the industry, from payments to financing to revenue collection, etc. as well. So, yeah.
Viviane, I want you to kind of start where you ended and weave in the two, conversants here. You spoke a bit about, not just trying to drive, being ahead of regulation, influencing regulation, but also, making sure that you target things. And Brazil is, they're honored here at Cannes, they're honored here in AfroCannes and recognized for the beautiful stories that are being told. What do you think is the next step that has to be taken, and what types of projects are you financing because of that?
Primeiro, olhar para a tecnologia, olhar para a possibilidade da IA não na perspectiva de uma competição com os espaços de trabalho, né? Eu acho que tem uma promessa que é o como a utilização da IA nos permite recuperar tempo de qualidade, né? Tipo, tempo de qualidade de vida para as pessoas e tempo de qualidade para a realização do próprio trabalho.
So at first, we need to look at the AI not just as a competitor, but as we can't look at it as a competitor. We have to look at it as a tool to help us regain the time of quality, not only for our own lives, but also for our work, because we're able to do a lot more work a lot faster.
Então, tenho visto com entusiasmo e experimentado as ferramentas no meu trabalho cotidiano. Então, quando penso que vou organizar um mood board, entendendo qual é a estética que desejo pro meu filme, tenho feito uso da inteligência artificial para chegar em sugestões e abrir uma reunião qualificada e avançada, seja com meu fotógrafo, seja com minha diretora de arte.
So I've been taking advantage of these technologies and being able to see closely as I use it for optimizing my work and creating, for example, a mood board and being able to communicate with the photographers or the team in a much better and faster way than before.
Então, avançado em coisas que antes eu precisaria gastar 5 reuniões para fazer as pessoas compreenderem o que eu estava pensando, eu consigo chegar com um documento em uma reunião, resolver a compreensão entre nós e partirmos do mesmo ponto, do ponto de vista artístico. Isso é recuperar tempo para os processos.
So I've been able to speed up a lot of processes, not only the processes of getting the work done, but also in communicating within the team, because I'm able to get the message across in one meeting of something that would probably take 5 meetings to do. And that is what I mean when I say that I'm regaining time of quality and time of work.
Por outro lado, tenho refletido como os governos vão encontrar alternativas e respostas regulamentadoras para funções para trabalhos tão indispensáveis e necessários para a nossa indústria, como o trabalho de atrizes e atores, por exemplo. Como diretora, eu não capturo aquela voz, capturo aquela imagem, pago uma única vez e vou usar ad eterno em diversos outros produtos, porque a inteligência artificial me possibilita isso.
But I've also been thinking a lot about how we can regulate the use of AI to make sure that it is fair for all of the talent and everyone who is working. For example, me as a director, how are we going to make sure that actors, for example, are not going to have their image or their voice stolen, be paid for their work once, and then have that used several times again and again through AI?
Como roteiristas não perdem a sua importância, né, tipo, no valor de produção, porque a gente consegue, com a ferramenta, extrair uma sinopse rápida e vender o projeto, e aí, por conta disso, a gente acha que a inteligência artificial é capaz de escrever os roteiros em profundidade e com a mesma qualidade que bons roteiristas conseguem nos entregar. Como defender esses lugares, esses valores de produção e essas propriedades intelectuais, né? Isso tem feito parte das minhas preocupações na interação com o tema.
And then, for example, how are we going to make sure that screenwriters are not losing their work, having their ideas being reused through AI and repurposed, or they start a script and then all of a sudden we're using AI to rewrite the script, and that work of that screenwriter is not getting paid for. And those are the things that have been on my mind in terms of how can we create regulation for this, and be able to use AI in a responsible way.
No Brasil, hoje enfrentamos um processo de regulamentação das plataformas VOD e tem sido um debate tenso e dolorido com toda a sociedade brasileira, porque nós temos defendido uma regulamentação que leve em conta a produção independente nacional, que leve em conta a produção intelectual, né, dos nossos diretores, diretoras, nossos roteiristas, e tudo isso faz parte, né, tipo, desse momento que a gente tem olhado para quão benéfica as novas tecnologias podem ser para a nossa indústria audiovisual.
So right now in Brazil, we're having a huge conversation around regulation of VOD, and the conversation has been tense and very heated within all of the society, and especially the artists, and how to make sure that even independent filmmakers and all of the sectors of the industry are getting paid for their work in a responsible way. And qual que foi a última parte que você falou? And how positive the new technologies can be for the audiovisual industry.
Yeah, so we got a lot there. Both how do we leverage AI to make our work more efficient, optimize us, right, to kind of replicate ourselves. How do we think about AI as a tool and not just as a replacer? And how do we protect both the creator, the filmmaker, the writer, and make sure they have fair compensation? I think those are some of the key points that we've heard here. I want to pivot a little bit and to kind of explore in the last 10 or 15 minutes that we have here, how are each of you in your respective areas, trying to amplify the stories of the continent, of the diaspora? What projects are you working on? And how can the audience kind of tap into those opportunities?
All right, I have to get back to the AI from the legal perspective, and IP is critical. Your intellectual property is your gold. And if you cannot prove that you own what you say you own, nobody's going to touch your product. Nobody's going to touch it because there's too much risk involved. And so the beauty of IP is that you can create like different silos. So if you've got a production company and you've got one film so far, create a separate entity for that film. And in the United States, they're called LLCs, limited liability company. In other places, whatever the company's called, you create a separate company for that. There's a couple of reasons. One, investors want to see that your accounting is tight. You don't have just one company and 5 projects or 6 or 10 projects under that, because then it's hard to figure out where's the money going, where's the flow. Make sure each project you do has a separate entity, so the legal risk is contained in each entity, okay? With regard to AI is a wonderful tool, but it's kind of the Wild West now. It's like, how do you maintain that? One of the issues with AI is that there's, as she was referring to, there's so much that can be done to change bits and pieces of people's work. You've got to make sure that you maintain control of, let's say you do a spin-off or an adaptation, or there is a comic book or anything. Each one of those can have its separate entity, and you can monetize each one of those separate things. If you do a teaser for your new show, if you have a meet and greet with some of your talent and you do some little, like, what's the production word? But, you do some filming of that, you can make that its own basically project or product. And you can license that as a way of generating audience interest and customer participation. That's value. So don't think that you have to have a complete product finished in order to sell it. Little bits and pieces have value. When you put together a soundtrack, when you put together artists who are coming to contribute in whatever way, consider ways that you can itemize some of the different things that they do and use each one of those as like a separate nugget, a separate piece of value that you then sell. There's a lot of ways to monetize in this business. You do not have to wait to have the complete product. And that's what a lot of these streaming companies want to see. They want, how can we, get, 10 different ways out of this one thing? So use your creativity aside from just the vision you have. Think about, how can I make this into something different? Whether it's, I'm thinking of kids products, dolls, and all kinds of things like that. There's lots of things to do. Again, make sure that your IP, your intellectual property, is completely owned by you. You've got to show chain of title. If you're using someone else's story, do you have the rights to that story? You got to be able to prove that. Some things are in the public record, public domain. That's a different story. But if you are saying, I'm basing it on Miles Davis, I'm basing it on whoever you want to talk about in history, Sekou Touré, whoever, do you have proof that you have the right to tell that story from the family, whatever? If you cannot document that, good luck, okay? You don't want to have anyone coming back to you later on with a lawsuit and saying, we own this or whatever. That's the first thing they want to see. So when I talked about problem solving earlier, problem solve from the beginning. Anticipate as you begin to work on your project, what might be the issues coming up? What are some of the legal stumbling blocks? And what you're going to need is a lawyer who can sort of think through this with you, because you guys as the creators are doing your vision, the beautiful part. That's what we all want to see at the end. But in order to get to where we can see it, you've got to think through the problems ahead of time. So I wrote some of this last night. Let me make sure I cover it. Yeah, I mentioned licensing and ownership up front is critical, whether it's for a spinoff. I talked about the audience gap. I have some of these, by the way, for you guys. I printed some out because I was like, I'm not going to be able to get to everything, but it's so helpful. I did a case study on, you may be familiar with a movie called The Black Book out of Nigeria in 2023. This is more funding. And so this was not my project, but it's one that I think is really useful because, again, people stumble a lot with funding. How am I going to get $300,000, $400,000, $1.5 million? Where does that come from? There's something that's being referred to as cultural repatriation. And that's what these people in the Black Book did. So it's a Nigerian film, and they were able to get some funding out of Nigeria itself, but there's Nigerians all over the world, a lot of whom are doing very well, quite well in the technology sector, in the finance sector, what have you. And a lot of these people wanted to give back to see themselves represented on screen, to see their stories told. So the producers reached out. They did a crowdfunding effort and reached out to these people, and they were able to raise over $1 million. I think was a budget between $1 million and $2 million. So they were able to raise this money. The funders got an equity stake to an extent in the film. Netflix ended up picking it up because then there's less risk for the streamer. They ended up also doing, having some co-production treaties, they're called agreements basically, with like South African, I don't know if they were editors and photographers, but also people throughout the African continent were able to leverage what they could bring to the project. So you're doing kind of cross-pollination, but staying within the continent, if that's what your aim is, to tell the story. And let me tell you, there will be some narratives you hear that say Africa is trying to catch up, they don't have the infrastructure, you have everything you need. You have everything you need to tell these stories. And so don't let people make you believe that it's not there. There's the ecosystem, you've got the creative talent, you've got filmmakers, you've got musicians. I mean, there's so much. Afro beats, by the way, it came out in an article I read recently that Afro beats is the #1 music genre in the world right now. These people, Burna Boy, one of my favorites, is selling out stadiums. I forget who the artist was, perform for some royalty. It's huge. That's also part of your product. Now, obviously, you have to have licensing for that, but maybe if you can't get a big top artist, get some local person who's who's hungry for it and who's going to do a deal with you and license you that soundtrack or that piece of music for a little bit. People want to hear this. We are movers of culture. We are creators of culture. Don't undervalue that. You determine what your value is, and then you go and present it. And if you can come with a product that is at least has some funding, and again, that's why I say show your numbers, show your data, understand what the data is, where you want to go. Everything's not going to Netflix. Everything's not going there. You can also do things like it's called FAST channels, free advertising. I forget. It's like Roku. Say it again. Thank you. Free advertised supported television. So let's say you have a catalog of things that you've done, shorts, features, what have you, and you want to get it on to somebody's, screen. You don't have to pay for this. They will take the advertisers pay to get these the content on TV, but lots of people who maybe aren't paying for cable or whatever or don't have Netflix can see these projects, and then you begin to build a name for yourself. Then you can go to whether it's Amazon or whomever and say, well, now I have a track record. You can see my show on Tubi. You can see my show on Roku, things like that. So there's lots of ways to get around. You don't have to just always aim for the top. Start where you are and build up from there. So my passion's coming out now.
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. The ever advocate is here and in the room. Phil, you talked about in our little kind of quick, sidebar. I almost said approach the bench, but I'm not an attorney, so excuse me. In our little sidebar earlier, you talked about your particular areas of investment, going into the Middle East and going into the African continent. I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. In fact, I met Prudence at the Red Sea Film Festival. I've worked on telling kind of Black Saudi stories. Excuse me. How was the entry there? And what stories are you looking to finance that come from both the Middle East and especially really Africa and the diaspora broadly?
So yeah, our activity and our push in the last 12 to 18 months has been Middle East for sure, but it also has been into Asia as well. The stories that we want to, the type of finance that we're supplying is debt finance. So, this is very new and, not currently being supplied in the Middle East or Asia or in Africa, to my knowledge as well, in discussions that we've had to date. And, it's pretty much the lifeblood of the indie industry in Europe and North America, and helps many productions get off the ground. Yes, it involves an element of different structuring and a bit of a different strategy in terms of fundraising, engaging with certain partners and having some partners come to the table with tax credits and rebates and pre-sales, etc. But at the end of the day, it's far more beneficial for the film producer, for the IP owner, and for the other investors because they are putting in less money and they're de-risked. So, as I mentioned, we launched $20 million fund in the last couple of days here, focused on those two regions. For us, we're kind of a little bit project agnostic. It's about, can we get comfortable with the collateral that we're lending against in a very boring sort of bank approach. But the opportunity we see, I suppose, taking a step back, is across really exciting, booming areas of the world that are, there's stories that haven't been told, that we can provide this more institutional approach to financing and a lot of other experience and potentially infrastructure and investment in other areas as well that help grow the industry. And that's where we're really excited, to take some of this and move it into Africa as well. Have we done anything in Africa yet? Not yet. We're currently building relationships, and especially in just being here for the last week, I'm hopeful that we'll be announcing stuff and moving pretty fast on that, because, as I said, we see the same booming production sector, the same absolutely, fast-growing audience that are very, very hungry for content, local content and international content. Governments and countries that are wanting to use the creative sector as a driver for growth, not just locally, but to export their culture globally and assert themselves on a bigger stage as well. So we can play a part in that, and within that to uplift the storytellers and the filmmakers that maybe haven't been getting their opportunities to date. But then with our finance hat on, it's just about the collateral. But then it plays a part in the whole kind of ecosystem and structure, I feel.
Viviane, you have the last word here today. We want to give you an opportunity to she's going to drop the mic in a few moments. Brazil, again, is doing amazing work in this space, and you in particular are producing and kind of growing an audience. What are the projects that you're most excited about, and how can folks here connect with you to collaborate?
Bom, de fato, a gente tem feito um trabalho incrível que tem nos felicitado no Brasil, e fico muito feliz que nesse momento a gente esteja conseguindo ser vistos e percebidos pelo mundo, mas ele passa por algumas decisões estruturantes, né? Sobretudo quando o meu trabalho ele está todo ancorado da perspectiva de 56% da população brasileira, né, que são as pessoas negras.
So we're definitely happy with everything that that we've been able to do in Brazil, especially with the attention and the space that we've been gathering around the world for our films, and
tomamos algumas decisões estruturantes.
We've made some structural decisions. In order for us to get to where we are, it's because we did some very important decisions there within the structure of the government and the society.
Primeira, pessoas negras, indígenas no Brasil, elas precisam e devem ter acesso a recursos para contar suas próprias histórias e suas próprias narrativas. A gente entendeu que esse lugar do frescor e da inovação narrativa vai partir no mundo desses grupos sociais.
So first, we understood that the freshness and the creativity is going to come from indigenous and black folks being able to tell their stories, and we created political or policies for those people to be able to have access to funding, so they can have their stories made.
Depois que, para além dos talentos criativos, precisávamos formar os nossos talentos empresariais. Precisamos de pessoas negras, pessoas indígenas, capazes de gerir e tocar as estruturas que salvaguardam as nossas histórias.
And second, we understood that in addition to being able to fund their projects, we have to give opportunity for indigenous and black people to hold positions of power within the structure, but also to have their own companies and to be managers of their own businesses.
Terceiro, olhamos para o mundo para entender com quem nos interessa coproduzir. E aí nos liberamos ou nos libertamos da ideia de que só é possível coproduzir no audiovisual com a Europa ou Estados Unidos. Então, tomamos como prioridade investigar e criar caminhos para coproduzir com o continente africano, América Latina, Oriente Médio e Ásia.
And then third, we looked at the entire world to see what are the possibilities and the opportunities for us to co-produce. And we moved away from that narrow perspective of only thinking of Europe and the US as co-production partners. And we opened up to Africa, to Asia, to South America, and see those co-productions and those partnerships as empowering to tell our stories and to create great content.
E voltamos para o nosso país e dizemos de 1,5 bilhão de reais que são investidos anualmente no setor audiovisual, uma parcela disso precisa ser direcionado para empresas geridas por pessoas negras e indígenas no país.
And then we went back to our country and we said, out of every 1.5 billion reais that is being generated through the content that we're making, a part of that needs to be reinvested into companies that are Black and indigenously owned, so they can be strengthened and they can continue to make content.
Acreditamos que essas decisões que foram tomadas nos últimos 8 ou 5 anos no Brasil vai nos possibilitar chegar na próxima década e celebrar junto com os irmãos nigerianos, dizendo a população negra brasileira aprendeu a enriquecer junto com vocês.
And we hope that these policies that we have made are going to allow us in the near future to sit down with our brothers from Nigeria and smile and say, hey, the Black community has learned from you on how to make money.
Well, what else do I need to say here, right? Thank you so much for this really dynamic panel. Let's give them a round of applause, please. As we kind of wrap up here, I'm just gonna end. I'm gonna do what you said here and get the IP for this. I'm gonna trademark this. Yeah. Data's gold, content's king, and AI is the core gesture. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you all for our lunch break.